Vellapanti, an online house party for people with disabilities, every Saturday, April 2020.
So, hi everyone, I'm Nidhi Goyal. I'm the founder and executive director of Rising Flame. Welcome to our event, Vellapanti. We're really delighted that all of you could join, particularly in these moments we feel staying connected, sharing, coming together, building empathy, and continuing to have fun is really, really important. So, thank you so much for joining. So, we officially start. Hi everyone, welcome to the call. Thank you so much for joining us today in our series of, as we're calling it, house party, but really online events called Vela Panti. Vela Panti is the time to hang out, chill out. And we know these are difficult times. We've all been overwhelmed with news of what's happening, how lives are being threatened, etc. But it's also important in this time more than ever for us to come together, to stay connected, to not feel isolated, to do something productive, to build and continue building on empathy, to remember diversity, and most of all, to have a lot of fun. So in this whole process, we thought, our Rising Flame team thought that it's important for us to bring together this series of once a week. Let's catch up with all of you. And so every Saturday we'll be meeting around the same time, 3:30 to 5. And every week we'll be doing something different. This week we're we're doing a book reading, which means I'll take you through that in a couple of minutes actually. Next week we'll be watching a film, and the details of which will reach you in a couple of days, so please watch out for our social media, Facebook. We will again send a mailer for those who've joined through our mailers. We will circulate the WhatsApp in the various disability groups, so watch out for those. And those are not on all of this. Rising Flame has a Facebook page and a Twitter handle called Rising Flame Now. And so please follow us there, or you could simply email us at team@risingflame.org for the schedule of the for each Saturday. So welcome once again. I wanted to just share with folks that we are recording the call and we wanted to take consent. This is a public event and we wanted it to be accessible and remain accessible, so that those who couldn't join in today could access it much later as well. So in terms of access and accessibility, we do have any kind of support that blind or visually impaired, low vision folks need. You could again just ping us. You have one of our numbers, call us, or just unmute yourself and just speak in between. We'll pause if you need any particular assistance. For deaf and hard of hearing folks, we have sign language interpretation going on. For everybody, you do not need to switch on your video unless you want to. It's totally up to you. If you want to keep your videos on, please take into account your bandwidth and your internet issues before turning on your video. We've sincerely requested everyone to keep themselves on mute while the call is on, unless you're making an intervention, and we will come to the Q&A session in a bit. I'll walk you through the app a little bit. There is a mute and unmute button. There is a participants button. If folks using iOS or TalkBack are using it on the phone, there is a participants list. If you click on that button, you'll see the list of participants. At the bottom, you could type a message, and send to all is an option, or you could type next to the name and send a message to that person. There are also options like raising your hand, etc., and the more options, but you do not need to do that unless you're comfortable. If you're comfortable, please click the icon of raising your hand. Otherwise, please just feel free to jump in the Q&A session, and we'll facilitate the session accordingly. So that's all about the platform. Again, we're recording this, and we're also going to be doing some social media. On any of our social media platforms, we do not name people. So if people have objections or do not want their quotes or what they say to go out at all, then we're happy. You can just say, I do not want this to be quoted on anywhere, and we'll not write any of those things. But also in recording, if you wanted to say, okay, I don't want my intervention to be recorded, we'll ensure that we edit it out for putting it on our website and YouTube. So without any further ado, today we're here for the book reading of the anthology, 11 Ways to Love. It is a collection of 11 stories on love and diversity. The different colors of love, as they described by the publisher Penguin Random House. And I was very fortunate to have my story published in this anthology. And I was very fortunate, even more so, because I was published alongside a fabulous person, Navika. Um, I would like to invite Navika now. And the way we will go about in the call is Navika will read her story, which will be followed by 10 minutes of interaction. So we will sort of have Q&As, etc. I'll then request my colleague Srinidhi Raghavan to read my story because it's difficult for me to read while my software is speaking. So Srinidhi will read on my behalf, and then it'll be followed by a 10-minute Q&A. So yeah, without any further ado, can I please invite Nadika to take the tour? Nadika, could I also please request you to introduce yourself? I want to thank you and invite you. Thank you so much for joining us on this call, for giving us your time, and for agreeing to read out your story, the beautiful love story that you've written.
Thank you, Nidhi. Thank you, Srinidhi. Thank you, Archita. Thank you, everybody. And hello, all. Happy to be here, and thanks for asking me to read my essay. I'm Nadika. I'm a sort of a writer, sort of a researcher, sort of something. I'm a trans woman. I come from Chennai, currently living in Bangalore. I think that's about all. So I'll just start reading my essay. It's called "The Smartphone Freed Me: Dating as a Trans Woman." If you need me to stop at any point, or if you want me to explain a term that you think you want to know more about, you just let me know, and then we can do that. Yeah. So, I'll begin reading. It was a Saturday morning. I shut the door to my room on some pretext, went to the bathroom, and began reading out numbers on my phone screen. The number sequence is random, and I read each sequence out in different voices. First slowly, pausing and extending the way I pronounced each digit. Next, breathier and huskier than my usual staccato. Then high-pitched, but that was quickly abandoned because it sounded like I was being squeezed by a vice. I was trying and miserably failing to sound like a woman. My voice, which at some point in the past I had intentionally broken to make myself sound bass and deep, was now unmistakably masculine. In college, the other boys in my class had already begun sporting a deep voice, and there I was, still with a smooth chin and a smoother, higher pitched little voice. For young boys trying to be men, this was easy game, and I got a fair bit of grief from my classmates. I wanted to fit in, be one of the gang, and so I determined to break my voice. I stressed it out, screaming and shouting every day, constantly straining my vocal cords. It took about 4 weeks for the first cracks to appear, and a few more months before my voice settled down to what it is now, a deep bass baritone. The kind of voice that could and did do radio voiceovers. So why was I trying to sound like a woman? Because I am one. And because I am attracted to women and wanted to get onto Lespark, a lesbian dating app that not only demands that you look feminine, but that you sound feminine too. In sum, that you prove you are indeed all estrogen and no testosterone, which meant that I, a trans woman, was inferior second-class citizen in the world of Lespark. Until I was 17, I did not have a word for who I was or could be. I did not know I was a transgender girl. But as a 16-year-old, I discovered the internet. Those were the days of dial-up, of VSNL's multiple gateway connections to the big blue yonder. And in between searching for games to play, attempting to learn HTML by copying code from other sites, and trying to find people to talk to, I hit upon what at that time felt like a novel idea: pretending to be someone else. I had stumbled onto a chat room that was meant for frank conversations between women and was strictly off limits to men. And so, on Yahoo, I became a girl. I borrowed liberally from my classmates' lives to invent an alternate backstory for myself. I expected to be found out immediately. I feared that what I was saying and how I was saying it would be seen through, and I would be shamed forever. But that did not happen. Yahoo's chat rooms became my second home, and the people, my mentors, my crushes, my fantasies, and over time, my friends. As tentative friendships firmed up, I followed each of my chat room friends to their personal profiles. Jumping from link to link, I learned of interests, hobbies, and terms that were new to me. Transvestitism was one such. After a little digging, I found a chat room dedicated entirely to this interest, where I found validation for deeply hidden, very frightening thoughts I always had. I found community. One of the first people I befriended on this chat room was a middle aged former sales executive from Portland, Oregon, who in the late 40s underwent hormonal transition and began life anew. Frank became Francesca, and she called herself a trans woman. I knew then who I was. This understanding was neither liberating nor comforting. I was a teenager, a period of rebellion, of questioning my identity, of challenging authority and received wisdom, were par for the course. But for me, it was more than that. I was questioning a deeper part of my identity, of who I was supposed to be. I had come to realize that I was not comfortable with my body or what I perceived as. So, who was I? My body or my soul? I watched others take their gender identities for granted, belonging biologically, physically, and sexually to the bodies they were born into. I grew more confused and exasperated. Questions, doubts, one remained, a thorn forever in my flesh. Did this explain why, even though I had crushes on other girls, I didn't act on them? It was another Saturday, one of those lazy afternoons. A colleague turned friend and I were sitting in the balcony of a coffee shop. She was smoking. I was trying not to cough over mine.
Clean, it'll go off.
Okay, bye.
Sorry?
See, you can talk. So she.
You want me to stop somewhere?
I think that was an accident, Nadika. Please.
Okay, all right. I was trying not to cough over mine. In a distracted, offhand way, she spoke about her crushes and her disappointments, her possible loves and maybe loves. It was a regular, innocuous conversation, but it soon triggered a bit of pain, a sense of melancholy for a past me. What is it like to grow up cisgender? I'll never know. I never experienced the joys and trials of an adolescence in which identity and assigned gender are in fairly close sync. I've never experienced the feeling of being attracted to, and more importantly, being attractive to other people, of being someone who's sought as a romantic or sexual partner, of having a bit of confidence in my body. Even growing up transgender, if that realization that one is trans comes early enough, one can perhaps feel some degree of attractiveness. My friends talked about boyfriends and girlfriends, maybe wives or possible husbands. They looked back fondly on the people who fell for them, chased them, loved them, gave them the space they needed. There was the boy who categorically stated to my friend's mother that he couldn't possibly drop her home before 2 a.m. There was a girl who came home one night, offered to help my friend through a bad breakup, and stayed on to be her next love. All that I never had. Yes, in the future I may, once, if, when, maybe, I transition. But I never experienced young love, that hot-blooded, hot-hearted feeling of being someone's sole pursuit, of being wooed, of having someone come home and meet my parents to ask if they can take me out for a movie, for a dinner on a date. Growing up with a distorted understanding of my own identity, I felt a deep-seated anxiety and a sense of shame about my own body. This, together with the conditioning that prevented me from being either a complete rebel or a total conformist, meant that all I could do was experience the life of a teenager from a distance, experience it vicariously, falsely. I never had anyone coming home to ask me out. I did not have girlfriends giggling and whispering in my room discussing potential dates. I haven't had and will never have a girl trying to sneak a kiss while my parents are downstairs. I grew up with people for whom all these things happen. I have friends from later in life whose future loves and lives are companions to their teenage loves and lives. Not for me. Whatever a person's teenage experience of love or sexual awakening was, good or bad, it paved a path for their adult pursuits. All I had were fictions and inefficient facts culled from hastily put together books. And so it was as an adult that I did not feel capable of acting on my debilitating, deeply felt crushes. I've always been aware of dating websites. They've been in the background of all my internet forays. A hook here, a line there, asking to reveal all with the promise of a soulmate or at least a partner for sexy times. I tried a few too. From my early 20s onwards, for nearly a decade, I left personals on Craigslist, drafted profiles on Match.com, and attempted to navigate the world of hookups in the pre smartphone era. Glorious non results. These early shots at dating online were my over-sincere attempts to conform to the male gender assigned to me at birth. A gender expression and identity I based on imagery drawn by friends, by TV, and the people I was talking to online. There were two modes. The hot, fit young man who could easily get a string of hookups, and a sensitive, cool dude who could listen to any woman and thus get any woman to fall in love with him. Deeply flawed ideas of masculinity and sexual prowess, a discomfort with and a shame about my body and how I looked, and a dislike of sex without love, conditioned into me by family and society, clearly indicated which of the two modes I had to operate in. From the here and now, I see what an insecure person I was then, and how I must have put off the very many people I was trying to get together with. I was happy to place the blame for my failure at finding a match on the woman, on technology, on other men, on racism, on other women, on everybody but myself. And so I strutted out and acted like the sensitive, cool dude I knew I wasn't. Weeks and months of no hits, no results, not even a hello later, I realized this wasn't working for me. So I gave up, accepting what my teenage self had realized long ago. I was a woman, damn it, and it was as a woman I had to find love, or even friends. And so, age 30, but feeling like a 17-year-old girl, I went online to okcupid.com and created Nadika's first dating profile. It was a kick. It was a deep emptiness in the bottom of my stomach. It was exhilarating. It was confusing. Today's OkCupid is vastly different from what it was in 2012. Back then, it could either be male or female. Two choices. And oh, you had to have photos that were of you and mainly of your face. So I wasn't male, but I was saying, yeah. Um,
Narika, again, I think
some
it's
accident.
just the network. Yeah.
Okay. How much more time do we have?
You were reading so well, I didn't time you at all. We can just go on for a couple of minutes more.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I wasn't a male, you wanted to start from there.
So I wasn't a male, but was I entirely female? Will the lie be blatantly obvious the minute I uploaded a picture? I was deeply insecure about the photos I had. They were all of me sordidly performing the masculine. But I poured my heart into the profile, and for photos, I reverted to my favorite source of photos for myself. Even today, Second Life. Second Life is an immersive, massively multiplayer online game that creates a virtual world in which users interact with each other through avatars or online selves. On Second Life, people buy land, build houses, make friends, build 3D existences, meet each other, sing songs, dance, have sex, play with each other, and play against each other. Designers make clothes, artists draw and paint, and all of this is there inside this virtual reality world and an online game. For me, it was not just a game, it became an existence, a life. I first heard about Second Life through an archaeology project. The University of California at Berkeley was recreating an ancient site, Katal Hayuk, in what is now Turkey, online. Katal Hayuk was first excavated in 1958. Archaeologists estimated that the city was settled originally about 10,000 years before the present, and that it must have had a continuous culture and life that lasted for about 2,000 years. It was a society without hierarchies, no differences. Archaeologists didn't know exactly why Catalhoic citizens decided to organize society without much difference between gender and class. But what remains and can be seen in the archaeology is that the men and women, rich and poor, old and young, all lived in the same village and carried on doing so for 2000 years in a society that was as close to being truly egalitarian as human beings could ever get. The UC Berkeley team of archaeologists and creative geniuses decided to rebuild and recreate the site on Second Life as a way of allowing more people to see and learn archaeology virtually. I signed up to explore the past and to explore a world without gender barriers. In the process, I came to terms with my own gender and created my future. On Second Life, I could craft the woman me. I could give her all my aspirations and hopes, fears and loves. I created her. I created me. I gave her a shape that I wanted for myself and a body that I could both covet and be inspired by. I was, tall, just the right kind of curvy. She was deeply tan, brown skinned, curly haired, and as feminine as I could never be. The greatest advantage of Second Life to me was that there was no first life fallout from the things what we did online. Man, woman, robots. There was no limit to bodies and expressions, and no assigned roles to gender. To the people on Second Life, you were who you claimed to be, and that validation, acceptance allowed you to play with ideas of yourself, your identity. Second Life became my venting space of frustration, a space for my art, a boudoir to explore my sexuality, and a personal photo studio. Back on OkCupid, I had no way of limiting who could see my profile, an option that users have on the platform today. So I got random men, mostly from India, trying to strike up friendships with me, with some really awful opening lines. I think I'll stop there.
Yes, Nadika, thank you so much. I was really very engrossed, and I'm sure everyone was, and we'd like to hear more. But I also thought this would be a great opportunity for people on the call to have an opportunity to interact with you. Before we sort of move to people, I just want to really, really thank you for writing this essay and for reading it for us today here with so much of honesty, with so much of love and warmth. So thank you for that. And somebody is people are complimenting you on the chat, Madhika. So you may want to keep an eye on the chat, saying somebody said it was awesome, etc. So yeah, so thank you for the kind words, even the participants, and I'd request people to unmute when they want to ask a question. Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. It was nice to hear this.
If anybody has any questions for Nadika, I mean, our team can keep asking questions. Rising Flame team will have a lot of questions, I'm sure. Srinati, can I please request you to keep an eye? Somebody has also written, love the essay. There are some compliments actually coming in. Is there any more questions on the Srinidhi? Can I request you to keep an eye on the questions in the chat?
Yes. Aye, Captain.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is Ishan from Kolkata, and
Hi,
it was
Ishan.
hello. It was actually a lovely experience, and I am very, very sorry I joined the meeting a little late, but it was just brilliant. That's number one. Number two, just could I ask one technical question here? The subtitles are constantly, since I am also using the screen reader. The screen reader is constantly, repeating the
Announcing the
subtitle.
subtitle.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, is there any way to mute that?
Yes. Have you joined from your mobile?
Yes.
Can you just so
Hello?
I don't know which device do you have, Ishan?
It's
Ishan, can you hear
MI-A3.
me?
MI-A3.
So if you have a talkback, a shortcut to the talkback, you can quickly just switch off the talkback. So that's what I do. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay. Srinidhi, can I request some of the longer compliments for you to read?
Yeah. Natika, there is somebody who's asking you a question about if you found somebody on OK. But there is a comment from Meenakshi, which is, "This is great. I wish to read this again. I think all of us are creating ourselves at different points of life. Really enjoyed it."
Hello? Hello?
Okay. Yes, we can hear you. Somebody wanted to ask a question.
Hello?
Okay. Now we can hear your software. Can you please speak? Whoever's unmuted themselves. Okay. Nadika, till then, I'm also very curious. Can you respond to this question about, did you find someone on OkCupid?
I didn't find someone on. Well, I did meet a few people from OkCupid, but I met my girlfriend on Tinder, and we've been together for about 3.5 years now.
You've literally left everything sizzling out of this conversation, Nadika. Okay. So, okay, can I take the veto of being the facilitator and ask you a question? Tell me some of the cheesiest lines that have come your way, if they have.
Lines weren't as much cheesy as a little. I didn't know what to do with some of those lines that I've got. Like one person said, "I don't really talk to transgenders. Are you okay with being a pen pal?" And I'm like, what is the point of that message? How do I respond to that? So a lot of the messages I also got at the start were sort of very
Transphobic.
A little bit transphobic, but also in a sense that. So the one of the most common things that I think a lot of trans people get, and I can't talk for everybody obviously, is that people immediately ask you what are your rates are, as if you're there only for sex and you're doing what you're doing there is you're online for soliciting, right? And so they almost always ask you that kind of questions. And so I got a lot of those kind of questions.
Mm-hmm. Did you tell them the rates are which they wouldn't be able to afford?
The thing is, a couple of times you try it and then it starts backfiring.
I know.
So, and then they'll ask
Sorry.
you for, okay, can I give you cash? What's your bank account number? What's your mobile number? And things like that. So it gets a little.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what else to say. Yeah, it's just, I'm sure if we unmute people and ask, there'll be some interesting OkCupid stories here as well. Nadika, do we have more questions?
There
because
is
I don't
another
want to
question actually. It says, how
Yes,
is the scenario now? Is there more acceptance generally? Great story.
So I'm not on any dating app or site right now. So I don't know what the acceptance is right now, because like I said, I'm in a long-term relationship right now, and so I'm off all the sites and all the apps. But towards the end, when just before I met my girlfriend, things were slightly looking up, and I think there there may be a bit more acceptance, but I also think I see a lot of my other friends posting on Twitter about the number of really misogynistic comments they're getting and things like that. I don't know. I think it's mixed bag. That's going to be mixed bag forever.
Can I please request people to mute themselves? It's creating a... Yes,
Hello.
thank you. Yes, hi.
Hi, I'm Gurpreet. मुझे मेरा एक
Yes.
क्वेश्चन है, कैन आई स्पीक इन हिंदी?
हाँ जी, गुरप्रीत बोलिए.
हाँ, मुझे ये पूछना है कि ये जैसे नादिया जी क्या मैसेज देना चाहेंगे दूसरे ट्रांसजेंडर्स को जो अभी अब तक सामने नहीं आ पाते ड्यू टू सोशल प्रॉब्लम्स, और दूसरे जो उनके आसपास के लोगों के लिए क्या मैसेज होना चाहिए कि जिससे इन फीलिंग्स ऑफ अदर पीपल आर नॉट हर्ट?
Nadika, so not for you. In general, I'm just going to translate also the question because I know there are some people who don't speak Hindi here. Gurpreet ji, thank you for the question. Nadika, the question to you is, what is one message that you would like to give trans persons, who have not yet outed themselves? And what would you want to tell
to the people around them?
So, yeah,
those who are
what would you
close
want
to
to
them?
do? Correct. So that, so I think so that there's a
They
building
can
of
better
empathy and
understand,
there's
na?
a connect. Exactly. So that's the question, Nadika.
So obviously, it's difficult to have blanket statements like that, right? We all live very different, complex lives ourselves, and there's no one person who's like everybody else, and there's no one situation that's like doesn't apply to everybody. So I think the number one thing to do is to start sort of accepting. It sounds so silly to say it, but it's just just accept it, accept yourself. There are no right or wrong ways to do anything in terms of your identity. There is nothing right or wrong. It's your identity, and you sort of decide how you want it, and you can keep changing. And so there's no such thing as this is the right way to do it and that is the right way to do it. And there's no good trans person, bad trans person. And the other thing is just be sort of prepared for a lot of so I think a lot of resistance may come from people who've known you for a really long time. Family will have an issue. Sometimes they'll have an issue, sometimes they will not, but just be prepared for it. And it's a long haul. You'll have to fight for it if you want that kind of acceptance. It's easy to say, no, I don't want to talk to my family, and so I can just move out. But there's also that thing of, who do I want on my side? So friends are going to be there for you. There'll be lots of friends. You can start building your own family, chosen family and all that. So just sort of be prepared for the long haul. Be prepared to fight for a long time on this. I think that's all I think I can say for the trans people themselves. For people around trans people, trans persons, just be a good friend, be a good ally, stand up. If someone, if you're going out and someone seems to sort of make fun of the person around you, I think it's a good idea to just have these conversations with your friends before, talk to them how they want you to respond to things like harassment on the streets, or how they want you to talk to their friends and their family and things like that, and sort of just be there for them, I suppose.
Nadika, there's a question from Shivangi, and then I think Nandini has her hand raised as well. So
there were two questions typed out, Srinidhi. Shivangi had a question, and somebody else also typed out a question about outing themselves.
Yeah. Should I read them out for everybody?
Yes.
Nadika, thank you so much for sharing your experience, sending you lots of love and pure solidarity. I wanted to ask you if you imagine that there could be any parallels in the experience of trans people and disabled. That's the first question from Shivangi. The other question from Oshin is also just wondering, isn't coming out somewhere a privilege? And the next question is from Rukmini, which which is thank you very much, Nadika, for sharing your experience. How is writing about your experience different from reading it out?
Okay, I will go from the easiest question to the hardest question. Yes, coming out is a huge privilege. Coming out is probably like, unless you have, you know that you will be, coming out, not everybody can do it. And that's why I don't like these, or today is a national coming out day, every queer person should come out and declare their identity and things like that. I have a deep problem with, because not everybody can do that. Not everybody needs to do that, right? So yes, coming out is a privilege, and I'm very, very glad that I was able to come out. And I had a bunch of friends who immediately just made it whole lot easy for me to do it. The first set of people that I came out to, they were all friends, and I had no issue. They didn't even second guess me. They didn't even ask me, the usual question of how did you know, what did you do, and how did you figure out questions and all. They just said, oh, good, let's go on. And then we all just went on as if nothing changed. So I was very happy with that. Obviously, coming out to my family was a lot more complicated. So that's a story for some other day, I suppose. Writing about my experience is different from reading it out, in that writing out, it's me just sitting in a room, staring at a computer and writing stuff, right? And I'm living inside my own head. I know eventually somebody will read it, but I don't need to see them, and I don't need to know what they think of what I've written. And the for writing is largely a lonely thing. Reading it out, especially here with all of you people, it's a lot more scary, because I'm like, who's going to ask me questions? What's going to happen? Will you like me? Will you not like me? Will you like what I've written? Will you not like what I've written? Those kind of questions happen. So that's the big difference. It's about suddenly opening a door and saying, hey, listen, I'm here, take me. And that's a little difficult for everybody. So that's one. Are there parallels in experience of trans people and disabled people? Definitely there are parallels. One is that how society sees you as someone who is half a person, right? There are lots of, we hear issues, when disabled people are not allowed to make their own decisions on who to go, where to go, what to do, even things like who do you fall in love with and things like that. And somebody else always decides. And so the larger society decides what you're capable of and what you want and what you don't want. So there are some parallels there. There's also parallels in terms of how institutions are, how you're seen in the world of medicine, right? Disabled people or trans people are seen as subjects of medical science or whatever. You have to go to a doctor and you have to open yourself up, and then they'll tell you how far you can go or what you can do and things like that. So there are some parallels there. Institutions, how they look at you, governments, how they look at you. You're seen as someone's problem. You're seen as someone's subject for saving. Lots of NGOs exist to save us from a whole lot of things, and because we can't save ourselves. So yeah, I think there are those parallels there.
Thank you so much, Nadika. I think there's
Hello.
just thank you for, yes. Can we can we take this last question? Yes.
I'm Nandini.
Yes,
Hi,
Nandini,
can you hear me?
Hi.
I'm Nandini
Yes.
from Calcutta.
Hi, Nandini.
Hi, Nadika. Thank you so much. And it's always such a wonderful experience when you can hear people talk about their own experiences. And with all of it, your fears, your confessions about how you, recognize yourself, which I think is very important. Recognizing oneself, recognizing one's sexuality, whatever you are, accepting oneself, as you said, is probably very important. But my question is not related anything, nothing technical or nothing to do with what you've said. But I think you've just read it's just an extract from your whole essay, right, Nadika?
That's right. Yeah.
So just curiosity, how does it, how do you go on to complete your essay? Just curiosity. And thank you once again. Thanks to Nidhi, thanks to the whole Rising Flame group for making this happen.
So I wrote this in, actually this was written in two parts. One, I first wrote for Deep Dives, which is a point of view project on exploring the intersections of technology, gender, internet, and things like that. So at the point that I was writing for Deep Dives, I'd met a couple of people, but I wasn't in a relationship. So I ended with going on the first date after meeting someone on OkCupid. For the book, they wanted me to expand a little bit more, and by then a lot of other things had also happened. And I had met my girlfriend by that time, and I was in a relationship at that time. So when I was writing for the book, I wrote about how I met my girlfriend for the first time.
And for that, you could go online on Amazon, buy the book. It's also available in Audible. So I'm doing a bit of Penguin Random House work here. Thank you so much, Nadika.
Not at all, my pleasure.
And there are tons of thanks and appreciation and gratitude coming your way through the messages. We really, really value you coming here and reading for us, and do appreciate just you putting yourself out there, writing, sharing your life again with all of us. Thank you so much, Nadika. And we'll, Nadika, if I can just request you to hang on here, because we'll finish if there are any more questions at the end of the second reading and the second Q&A. After that, we could still sort of respond if Nadika has time.
Sure, I'll be here.
So thank you so much, Nadika. And the next essay, it feels a little odd, but is authored by me. Like I said, I was very fortunate to have this opportunity alongside many brilliant writers like Nadika to have my essay, my story published. It's called I'm Blind, So Is Love. It's also the opening line of many of my stand-up comedy gigs, but I thought it was really apt. And I'd just like to, because I'm going to request my colleague Srinidhi from Rising Flame to read the essay on my behalf, because I'm a screen reader user and I may not be the best reader while I'm listening to the screen reader. I still want to share a little bit, because we start in the middle of my story. The story really begins from college and echoes some of the things that Nadika said, that about the fear and anxiety around dating, being a disabled teenager, having an acquired disability and acquired blindness, what that meant, how did I navigate my first crush in college, and what were the responses, and the whole growing up when it was one-sided or unrequited love, and the whole rejection, how did that come, but how did the growing up happen, right to the stage of me starting to work on disability, from a journalist career, from a mass media background and a journalism career. How did I start working on disability and what that opened up for me? How was the realization of sexuality and disability and working on the website that brought to me the understanding of how society at large views us, people with disabilities? And now we're going to read the happier part of the essay with you. Shrindi, can I please request you to do that?
Sure. Thanks, Nidhi, for introducing. And I hope I do justice to this piece because, yeah. So I'm going to begin with a poem that's there before the piece. Link hands and laugh with me. I grip lightly what I know I should let go, and grab largely at that which gives and lets me give more. Here, hold on if you can. I don't know what you'll choose to see, but I know I'm worth fighting for. So I'm going to read the piece now. Ashutosh and I knew of each other. If you're visually impaired in Mumbai and connected with the blind community, you inevitably know most of the people and even the gossip about them, whether you want to or not. I always jokingly say that I believed because of my incredible parents, I was out of the line of fire of the closed, gossipy cultural community that I belonged to. But I ended up in the blind community, which is more closed and God save us, more gossipy. In fact, I remember we were both at a common event, but I had not introduced myself to him because I thought that his questions to the facilitator of the program were irritating and quite disruptive. I didn't know that the voice asking questions belonged to his more outgoing friend. For some reason, he had not come up to me and said hello either. But that event was the catalyst that changed our relationship from strangers to forced friends to more, much more. I was meant to have coffee with someone else from the blind community. When I arrived, I was told that more people had been invited and Ashutosh was one of them. I ignored him as much as I could. I started animated conversations with the others, but perhaps sensing my irritation towards him and not knowing the reason, he tried to dip into my conversations with his other close friends. For me, it was another proof of his supposed disruptive behavior. And to add to it, he did the thing that annoyed me the most. He tried to smoothly pay the bill in a aggravated. I shoved my share of the bill in his hand, hopped into a rickshaw, and yelled goodbye to him. I didn't know that it was really the beginning of a beautiful friendship, a relationship of love, respect, fondness, criticism, and support. The first compliment he gave me was that I had long artistic fingers right after I shook hands with him. Not used to being checked out non-visually, it was quite frankly the creepiest comment I had ever received. But he really deepened my understanding of disability and its complexities. He seemed to be an introvert, someone who spoke very little and observed carefully. He was shy but sharp, big on ability but small on show, non-confrontational and quiet. I say he was like that because in the last 5 years of friendship, he has remarkably changed. I remember asking him around 6 months after we began hanging out as friends. You seem much more confident. Can I ask you what changed? He promptly replied, It is you. Before you, no girl has ever gone out with me, or rather asked me out, even for a coffee or just to chill alone. It was something I hadn't experienced at all. Thank you for just reawakening that human side of me and infusing it with confidence and warmth. I always knew that people with disabilities lost out on so many social interactions. I always had friends and I had not struggled with this so much. But I knew that socializing was very important. And this was the first time I was seeing its impact on a person. And believe me, it was a beautiful transition. I learned from Ashutosh that engagement with social networks can be transformative. People continue to say that Ashutosh didn't speak much, that he was silent and private. He always needed someone stronger around him to take the lead. But the Ashutosh I knew was smart, funny, and talkative. In a couple of months, I knew his silliness, his fears, his procrastinations, and the things that gave him a high. I knew that he didn't drink, that he was lazy when it came to exercise, and that he always first wanted to see the good in someone. No, no matter how obviously wrong the person was. We've had multiple fights about this. When Ashutosh and I started talking, I had successfully closed a project with an NGO and was searching for more work. I was depressed because the man I had loved for years, albeit one sidedly, had tied the knot with someone else. I was jobless and felt directionless in my personal life. Nights were scary and mornings brought no enthusiasm. Loneliness was thick and strong. Ashutosh was not the beacon of light in that darkness, but he just held my hand and showed me that the darkness can be lived through in comfortable and happy ways. Instead of the warm emotion and empathy I felt I deserved at this point, he said, Shut up and look after yourself. You are not pitiable, nor is your luck. This is just a phase, and I can tell you, you're going to be big in life. No one will be able to stop you, no man and no mountain. This was not just a pep talk. Ashutosh is known for being blunt with you, and me to him to the point of weakness. This was his conviction, his gut feeling, his objective assessment of me. He would often say, Goyal, for me you're royal, but move your ass and stop beating yourself. In our initial months of friendship, I would often lie awake at night, mulling over the next day, hoping it would not be even worse than the one that had just gone by. That is how depression envelops you. It's dark and smothering, and definitely seems unending. During many of those sleepless nights, Ashutosh, by then Ashu for me, would simply stay on the other end of the line, other end of the phone, while I lay awake miserable. One such night, he asked me a strange question. Will you come for a film with me? In no mood for jokes, I irritably reminded him that we did live 5 minutes away from each other, and that in any case it was past midnight and no cinema halls would be open. Ashu said that his battery was low and asked me to join him on Skype. Reluctantly, I did. When the call connected, I heard faint excitement in his voice, but I was too depressed to notice that the music began to roll. And then we began to watch one of my all-time favorite films together. Except, unlike the other versions of this film I'd seen, this one was audio described. Audio description is a pre-recorded soundtrack that describes non-verbal scenes in a movie, which means that you don't need to be able to see the screen. It was pretty much the only way I could have shared a full movie watching experience with Ashu that night, and he knew it. I remember easing into my bed to watch the movie, with Ashu's presence on Skype as warm as a physical hug. I heard his laughter at the same moments that I cracked up. We felt each other's silences during tense moments. With my earphones plugged in and my laptop resting on the bedside table, I soon fell asleep. Ashu was and continues to be just a friend. But that night, for a few surreal moments, I thought, what if? And although it wasn't meant to be between us, I'll always remember it as the most romantic midnight date I have ever had. Our friendship was about coping with tough times, being present in each other's life, yet giving each other space. Once, I threw a fit when he offered to drop me home in a rickshaw because it was quite late at night. The feminist in me felt he was being macho. When he didn't relent, I pushed him out of the auto rickshaw at the first traffic light we stopped at. He was not one to hold that against me, though. He seemed to understand that he could pick me up or drop me home if we both wanted it, or if he was free, and if it was convenient for both. But not because I was blind or a woman, nor with an intention of superiority. As time rolled by, I started valuing and appreciating little things about Ashu. For example, whenever we walked together, we had to hold hands, a little something that makes most couples jealous. But he would never try to dominate or lead or show me the way. He knew that I liked to take charge, and he was happy taking a back seat in walking, flagging down cabs, rickshaws, or ordering in restaurants. He had many non-verbal, unconventional ways to show his caring, but equally creative ways to be protective and even disapproving. We once decided to go out for dinner, planned by Kabir, who was Ashu's friend and also visually impaired. Kabir and I were kind of flirting with each other, and Ashu knew about it. When the evening of our dinner arrived, Kabir's intentions were clear. His flirtations became more aggressive and obvious. But I saw a side of Ashu that I hadn't seen before. He was silent, and it wasn't his general silence, which I was accustomed to, but a disapproving kind of silence. I was annoyed. Who was he to disapprove? Who was he to spoil the fun for me? This was also the guy who had helped me when I was spiraling into depression. And he was my best friend. And he knew my insecurities and fears and weaknesses and had never been judgmental. So why was he behaving this way? I couldn't help but notice the guys were not visibly talking to each other, but they were clearly communicating. The more silent Ashu became, the more exuberant Kabir got. I didn't envy myself that evening. I wanted to continue my fun and flirtation, but being unable to comprehend the dark mood that my friend had got into and not wanting to exaggerate his sullenness, I decided to call it a night. Suddenly, Kabir announced that he would drop me home. This was a tricky situation. I had a history of not letting Ashu drop me home, but I did want to spend more time with Kabir. Clearly engaged in some bizarre testosterone-fueled rivalry, the boys decided before I could to drop me home together. In the auto rickshaw, I was sandwiched between two men who seemed ready to kill each other. I held on tight to the back of the driver's seat, leaning forward, trying to make myself as small as possible so that I was not rubbing anyone, the right way or the wrong way. The men aligned themselves around me, with Ashutosh leaning away and Kabir leaning in, but with both having an arm draped around me on the backrest of the seat to ensure that the other was not touching me. If it was not so awkward, it might have been fun. The tension was thick. It was the first time two men were fighting over me. So what if it was happening only when I was 27? It would not be fair to Ashu to say that he, simply put, has problems with mad murders. He does, however, unabashedly offer comments on those he thinks are problematic. When I'm in one of my zones and feel like cribbing to a close friend about how I'm still single, he does this ridiculous thing of making a list of people who have hit on me in the last 5 years. This makes me giggle, roll my eyes, and say, yes, yes, I'm single by choice. The camaraderie between Ashu and I hasn't gone unnoticed. We have grown used to people assuming we are dating or exclaiming over the chemistry we share and accusing us of being in denial about the nature of our relationship. When questions, suspicions, and accusations are directed towards us or him, I often wonder how much we have defined love in a box and how much of a pleasing society exercise it has all become. There have been people who have felt that we're a perfect match because we're both blind. And of course, disabled people can only marry other disabled. They fear that neither of us will find anyone else. And this is reason enough for us to be together. Others think that our love and friendship run deeper than what they can fathom. So it is definitely love. What I find strange is that intimacy can't be separated from romantic love, especially between men and women. People would ask me if I felt as comfortable with him as I did with family. And I would promptly say yes. I have responses to many of the questions that people raise. There were girlfriends who I chatted with 5 times a day, every day for 5 years. There were other girlfriends who could tell you the entire contents of my wardrobe, including the things I may have hidden from my mother. There are male friends who can probably tell you my entire travel schedule of 4 flights a month. They know because they talk to me when I'm waiting at every airport. But I cannot possibly having so many affairs, right? Where Ashu and I are concerned, I have frankly stopped bothering to give a response. I don't believe that one's birth family is the only family that one can have. Neither do I believe that I can have just a female best friend. Not that a loving male friend in ways society cannot fathom would make him my lover. Or for that matter, that looking after each other and understanding each other or having an emotional connection is reserved for man and wife. It is liberating for me to experience a relationship which is so unique to me and which has taken so much from me and given so much more. Disability cannot spell the end of friendships or romance, but it sure does make them more challenging, more confusing. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
More confusing and at times more fun too. I was once discussing romance and flirtations with another friend, Amit, who has low vision. He said, you have a better chance of recognizing a flirtation because you're more perceptive. And I wondered at that conversation. Yes, I am perceptive, but I also have a brain which is very active and objective and cynical, and perhaps very much so when it comes to society's reactions around my disability. Sometimes my heart says that someone is hitting on me, although, of course, I do not know for sure, as if there is any surety in such an uncertain space. But my brain immediately rings the alarm, often missing out on the look or the gaze or the expression on the man's face, which would tell me, oh, she's so gorgeous, I totally am crushing on her. Oops, can't take my eyes off her. Oh, she's disabled and still so confident, ignorant attitude. makes adult dilemmas more complex than teenage ones. Of course, over a number of interactions with a man, I can mentally carve out the look he might have, or sometimes perceive things even in his face wouldn't show. This comes with familiarity. A spontaneous flirtation in the park, or across a drink, or even in the audience when I perform my stand-up comedy gigs seems impossible. Hi, we're done.
Thank you so much, Ravi. Thank you for reading my piece. Can I please request you to moderate or facilitate the
Sure,
Q&A?
sure, of
Let's
course.
take it on.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions, thoughts, etc.?
Okay, so this is Ishan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, thank you once again for this wonderful piece. I would like to thank the reader and of course Nidhi. By the way, Nidhi is in the curriculum of Jadavpur University Department of English in the Disability Studies course. I mean, her videos and her essays are there on the curriculum itself. But one thing which I would like to like Nidhi to respond to, the thing that she was sort of saying right towards the end of the essay, that, you know, this statement which often is hurled at us that, oh, you are blind, yet you are, but you are so confident, etc. So that conjunction which is over there, but yet, etc. But what I would want you to react to is, do you also think that the way we carry ourselves, or the way you carry yourself, you know, you speak English in a certain way, you carry yourself in a certain way, you have a certain cultural, social capital, etc., which you use to your advantage, etc. Do you also think that gives the ableist world or rather, I would, if I may put it this way, that allows the ableist world to see you in a more acceptable way? Do you think that that makes you more acceptable to them? Had it been a little different, in the sense, I mean, had you been not so confident? Because it often happens that we are often turned into inspiration pawns. Because
I totally agree.
Yeah, so I mean, that I'm sure that also happens with you, that, oh, she's so inspirational, she's so inspiring. So do you think that that gives them that comfort zone?
Correct. Thank you so much, Ishan, for starting off with the most complicated question. First of all, I'm really honored. Thank you for including some of my work in the curriculum. Really, really appreciate that. Responding to your question, I really want to say that I've always said this, that I come from a huge background of privilege, right? I've acquired my disability first of all, so I have seen the world. So when people say, "Oh, that's rose pink," I do understand what rose pink is, which makes it more comfortable, as you're saying, for non-disabled. Non-disabled persons or sighted individuals, let's say sighted, because there are other people with disabilities who are also uncomfortable with each other's disabilities. It's easier for them to accept or make that connection, right? So I do agree that and I think the biggest thing is what people say, and which annoys me a lot, is that you don't look blind, right? And I have this in my stand-up comedy gig where, you know, how is a blind supposed to look? Like, do we have some different colored lights in our heads, or how's a disabled person supposed to look? And I think that's a very important question. I think what they're trying to say is, in their language, without saying it, that your eyes look normal, the way we are used to looking at. And because I have a habit, which was cultivated when I was sighted, that I turned towards a person while speaking to them, right? All of these, they feel I'm posing. So some people say, "Oh, you pose to be non-disabled," and I'm like, I totally don't pose to be non-disabled. So, but that's me. You know, if I'm not looking at you and talking, you either know I'm reviewing a paper alongside, or you know I'm really annoyed at you. These are the two things that, but because that's me and that's how I work, right? Or I operate. But it does give people a sense of comfort, because constantly the ableist world, and I want to again deliberately use the ableist world and not the non-disabled world, because a lot of people with disability show ableism towards each other.
True.
Right? So the ableist world basically wants is in a constant search for the normal, right? And it's just, yeah, that's how the comfort zone builds and how people want to just interact. But the conjunction, the sort of everything, sort of the conditions are interesting, because they're like, yet you could do this. I can't tell you after how many serious talks that I've delivered, the person who's welcomed me has come back and said, we don't understand how you match your jewelry to your clothes. And I'm like, that's really what you got from my talk on disability, gender, sexuality, and violence. So, yeah.
Thank you
Thank you,
so much,
John.
Neeti.
There is lots of compliments for you in the chat box, Nadi.
And for you as well.
Yeah, I'm just stepping it aside, the compliments that are for me, as always. But there's also a question about from Kumar, which says, has it been easy or hard for you to come out and talk about love and sexuality?
Oh, it was, I think the saying, what do you say? Ignorance is bliss. So
Raveen.
I am, yeah, Praveen. So when I started working on sexuality and disability, so the spectrum of gender, disability, sexuality, and violence, with Point of View, Rising Flame did not exist at that point. And I was co-authoring the website, sexualityanddisability.org. I happily thought this was a gap area and I should write about it and talk about love, romance, relationships, marriage, parenting, all of those issues, right? I thought those were our issues, but I got a lot of flack. I got a lot of flack from our own community. I mean, outsiders gave me flack, that's another thing. I think the community giving flack really, but there were also a lot of people who supported me from the community, right? I think that was the most difficult piece. Again, I want to say I was very privileged because my family never gave me flack. In India, in most cases, women are worried about working on sexual rights, sexual and reproductive health and rights, because what will the family say, right? What will society say? And those two large questions never affected me. So I think I'm very privileged that way. But I did receive a lot of comments, and they continue. They've reduced in number, but I think the most common comment is that Nidhi's really loose. We could sort of have her. She can sleep with people, or she has slept with people. Yeah, Nidhi talks about sex. She's cool. So people find a lot of, they feel like they could call me and be like, oh, we have a problem, and get into very inappropriate talk. And I say inappropriate deliberately because they're getting personal and inappropriate. So yeah, it's been a journey, but I think it was all of that put aside. I think it was harder to speak about my own story and to articulate it this way. Yeah, I just think that it was. Yeah, I think even today, when someone has to typecast my work, they say, "Oh, Nidhi works on sexuality. Let's not call her for advocacy things." Because like this is not about sexuality, and I'm like, I don't really only work on sexuality, and it's very interlinked. So yeah.
There's another question, Nidhi, from Rukmini. It says, lovely to hear this. How do you name these relationships which are intense and intimate, but may not be bracketed as friendship and is not marriage? Should there be names for these kinds of relationships in an otherwise heteronormative ableist kinship? Words that we otherwise commonly hear on that.
And I'm not just saying this, I strongly feel that we don't need to label things. We don't need to, when we say, oh, we are friends, there are so many different levels of friendships also that I have, right? But we use the word friends very loosely. I don't know. I think for us, it's become a space where we feel the compulsion of naming every relationship. If we are friends, people want to know how close you are to this person. But how do I say how close, right? I think some of my closest friends have drifted apart for years and come back and become close friends again. And that's not even talking about the gray zone, as it's called, between friendships and relationships. I so personally, not as an author, not because I wrote this, I think just as Nidhi, I feel like we don't really have to define every interaction and every relationship that we forge with each individual, romantic or otherwise.
Thanks, Nidhi, for answering. You have lots of more complicated questions coming your way. The other question that has come is that when do you give a thought to write about your experience? How do you collect the strength for this? Also, if you can explain the reason behind this, that would be great. And the other question that is
Can you wait? Sorry,
okay,
I forget
sure,
you.
sure, sure.
I'm
Yeah.
not noting the questions, but how do you, what, sorry, the second half of that question,
How do you
so how do you
explain
find
the
the
reason
strength,
behind this?
reason behind
Writing your thoughts,
I think so too. Okay, if it's different, then please unmute yourself and share. Um, it took me a lot. I had multiple discussions before. So I always wrote on sexuality, disability, slipped in snippets of experiences from my life, from others' lives, etc. But sitting and articulating, and if you read the whole chapter, it's articulating and experience the one-sided love with Rahul that I talk about, which was not from a fantastic phase of my life, right? Which was from a phase when I was super vulnerable, when I was losing sight, when I was really grappling with like basic survival. There's a statement where I say, "Oh, I bought a rose on every rose day for him," because Rahul was my college senior, and I think for me it was sitting down and saying, do you want to share this story? It wasn't so much, generally my writing is like, this needs to be shared. It is for the community. We need to talk about these issues. For the issue, if I have to make myself vulnerable, it's fine. But for this piece, and I think this was personal to all of the authors, I've not spoken to everyone, but I think the way the book was approached, it was approached to say that you need to tell your story for a book. Although my identity stands as an issue identity, saying, oh, you're disabled, you're a woman, talk about issues. But for me, this was really not an issue-based essay. For me, this was a personal essay. And my first question to myself was, am I ready to share so much of my personal life? And honestly, I'm out there so much that everybody thinks I'm a very, very public person, that everybody knows everything about me, but I can't tell you how private I am. And so for me, it was a big dilemma before I could say yes to Penguin Random House to even write. And definitely in those decisions, I think I consulted some of my close friends. Everyone's names are changed in this essay, so I'm just, very casually taking names here which are quoted in the essay. So my friend Amit, who's quoted in the essay, I spoke to him. Of course, I spoke to Ashu, whose story I've written in the essay, and a few other friends. I don't think anybody took the decision for me. I said, if at 32, if I feel really still scared to put it out, what's the point? Am I fearing the loss of privacy, or am I fearing the judgment? And I think these were the conversations I had with myself. Penguin did not give me a lot of time, so I had to have all of these conversations with myself within 2 weeks. And I had to sit down. The tougher part was, which bits of my life do I want to share, right? So I think those were the navigations. How did I decide to write these particular pieces?
There's a question, the next question that's there is from Tony, asking about, given the fact that you're a woman with disability, how has your feminism influenced your ideas of or helped you think about love?
It's tough. Okay. I don't know. I don't think it's very hard to separate your personal understanding and your professional understanding. I think it becomes your value. So when you're a feminist, it's not just you're sporting like a work identity. You're trying to say that I follow these principles, right? I think for me, it shaped my understanding of love. But I also want to say that the community, the disability community, just the paragraph before where Shunavi started, I do say that, I started writing for sexualityandisability.org, and I met so many people with disabilities, and I understood so many variations of relationships and the way the barriers people face, the kind of stigma they face, the way they approached it. the understanding they built, the empathy that they sported. I think for me, the learnings came from lived experiences of people with disabilities and the feminist values. It came together. And for me as a person, right, as a strong woman who's always had independence at the center of her, dignity at the center of her existence, I think it just shows in some of the instances that I share as well, where I was like, you don't do this, we do it because we'd like to, not because you think you're a man. And someone who has that level of respect and dignity, I think, really works within my romantic relationships.
Hello?
Or just experiences of love. Yes, hi.
Hi. Hello?
Hi, I can hear you, yes.
Yeah, I have one question.
Yes, please.
So, generally, Nidhi, thank you so much. It was nice sharing the experiences. And generally, a person with disabilities, uh, we meet able person who is a boy, and so-called able people, if they have friends, if able person, if they have friends with in general ways, um, societies like other people, they don't notice, but person with disability make friends with able person who are boys or girls, like uh, gender. Why? What do you? How do I say? What do you think? Suppose suppose person with disability meets one boy, the different way of thinking and different way of view, like the more the friendship is not seen. In another way, they are seeing it.
Okay. Thank you so much for the question. I'm going to try and rephrase it a little bit. So you're asking me that one, we get noticed all the time if we have non-disabled friends, etc. If other non-disabled people have friends, they are not noticed so much.
Yeah.
It's seen as a very usual part of life. And second part is that if we have disabled friends, so we have disabled friends, then immediately the idea is, oh, they must not be friends. They must be having
Right,
something,
exactly.
right? Correct. This is a, thank you for putting this question. I'm laughing at the people, not at the question. I'm saying, this really comes from two disabled people should be together. That you should be in the corner of one society. You should live together. You should die together. You don't come and mix with us, right? And this is only the non-disabled people who carry the stigma. I'm talking about those instances. So the minute you have a disabled companion or a friend or a comrade, they're like, oh, come on, there's someone who's like her, or like him, or like them, right? Totally like them. So why don't they should be together? It's easier. They'll understand each other and they'll only live and all that, right? It's literally like this. The other thing is that it's still seen as an anomaly. If I have a non-disabled friend who's equally good, equally a close friend of mine, they'll immediately be like, Are, but must be friends because they're feeling pity towards her, must be friends to help her, right? Or must be some family friend, must be some brother. The immediate understanding is that there is a hierarchy. So there's a difference between disabled and non-disabled. So in people's minds, and so immediately they'll think that, acha, this must be because of some reason. Like, and generally we are all noticed. You go to the same eating place twice, the second time they'll remember and they'll tell you that, oh, you had come last time also over here, or you have come frequently, or you have not come from a long time. So everywhere you go, people remember because people notice us. And I laugh a lot because they're like, nobody notices celebrities also so much. Yeah. So I'm just going to pause. It's just, I think people just find us very, like, still anomalies in society. And circling back to Ishan's question, or the point Ishan raised, was really that, how close to normal do you look for people? And normal, I say deliberately with quote unquotes. Yeah, that how close to normal you look, and then the acceptance is higher.
Maybe there's a long question.
Okay, last one. Then we'll just. I
Yeah.
think we're. Okay.
Yeah. Hi there. This might be a terribly mundane question, but I'd really like to know how accessible you have found physical spaces so far for you to be able to retain agency in your interactions with people. I'm thinking about the part of the story where you hop into a rickshaw, where you've decided you've had enough, or you insisting you can make it home by yourself to assert agency. If I understand this correctly. I understand that one can navigate spaces pretty independently, but that's also contingent on how familiar you are with the place in question, isn't it? How do you then work your way around this literally and metaphorically? And somebody just wants to know what is true love.
What is true love? I don't know. I think Mamta asked that. Mamta.
Yeah.
I really don't know what's true love. I think it's each to his own, or each to their own. I really want to pass that question of what is true love. It's an experience, and everybody knows what love means to each of them, or they discover. And I think the beauty is as much in discovering as finding love. I want to go to the first question, and I want to acknowledge that it's not always possible to exit places, to have that agency to leave. Um, and I haven't shared a lot of this here because it also happened either around the time this essay was being published or later, that there are spaces where the situation's getting abusive and you still cannot leave because you don't have the agency to navigate that space alone, right? That someone's trying to assert their will over yours, and you're still struggling to assert back. You will assert back and go where, right? So as a blind woman, or as people with disabilities, we do face all of this. I think, again, I'm very fortunate because the narration that I did in the story was in my own city in Mumbai, where I'm pretty comfortable randomly hopping into rickshaws, asking help from random strangers. I've generally found the city becomes accessible because of the people and the crowds in the city. And so I feel very comfortable asking for help, and hopping in, hopping out, booking Ubers, navigating by myself, trying to go to a station, whatever else it is, right? So I think that's also a question of, like you rightly said, familiarity. That's also a question of confidence. That's also a question of if I was royally pissed and I was in a public space, I would still get up and ask for assistance from somebody else and not this person, so that they would know that I'm pissed. So I'm just trying to say that there are many ways to navigate this in and out. It's not always the best. If I were a wheelchair user, would I be able to hop into a rickshaw? I don't think so, right? So I think it's also my disability, the privilege of where I stay in which city, and just my outlook of, okay, I'm going to take this much shit from a person, sorry for my language, but I will not take beyond this, right? So constant negotiation, constant awareness. Yeah. It was a complicated question. I've just tried my best to respond.
Sorry, Nidhi, there's one more question, and that's it. Which was, what are the measures to strengthen social interaction? It was sent privately to me, but that's the question you have left. That's the last one, I think. Sorry.
To strengthen
social interaction.
Strengthen social interactions. I think it'll have to be an effort from all sides. It can be very simple. It can be just and if you're a non-disabled person or a person with a disability also, it could just be going up to one other person and speaking to them. It could be as huge a task as making social spaces accessible. It could talk about public transport accessibility. It could speak about inclusion within groups. But I think all efforts at the same time, one step at a time, would really help. I think finding really circles of friends, forging those relationships would be important. As people with disabilities, we've struggled at various points in time because all activities in the world are not universally accessible. People are not inclusive. But if you're a non-disabled person, you could just first start by reviewing how many people with disabilities do you even know in your environment. They do exist, but where are they, right? So I think efforts will have to be taken from the non-disabled by the non-disabled people as well, because for a very, very long time the onus has constantly been on people with disabilities. And this I just want to also share that there are some lightning talks by our fellows who are a part of our national leadership program by Rising Flame, called I Can Lead. And there's this very interesting talk called Friendships Conditions Apply by Shrishti Pandey. Um, she talks about the complexities of how friendships work, of how, as people with disabilities, if you're accepted, how there's a constant guilt of, are you burdening them too much? There's a constant question of if they're doing this to be friends with you or to earn brownie points in society. So it's very, very complicated. But I'm sure all of us taking tiny steps, which we all are, I'm sure, will help inclusion at large. I think with this, we should pause here. If anyone has any more questions for Nadika online, or you could find Nadika on Twitter as well. Before people sign off, I do want to say that we'll continue these efforts every Saturday. And for those who are not on our mailing lists or are not following us on social media, do want to receive an individual information invite on mail, please write to us at team at the rate TEAM at the rate risingflame.org. So TEAM at the rate RISINGFLAME.org. Any last questions for Nadika? Sir, can I please request you to, somebody has some background noise, could I please request them to mute?
Good evening, ma'am.
Hi, yes.
Yeah, this is Jayan this side.
Yes.
Yeah, I joined lately this event. Okay, so I wanted the recording if I can get the means so I can listen the whole one. But as much I have listened, it was great and amazing for me. So that's why I'm requesting you for if I can get the recording of the today's.
Great. Thank you so much for asking that. In the beginning of the call, we've shared, and I'll just share here. In a couple of days, in 2 or 3 days, we'll have the recording up on Rising Flame's website, which is www.risingflame.org. So that's the website address, and you could write to any of us. We are, our email IDs are on the website. You can find my colleagues Chenika, Arjita, Srinidhi, or I, and you can find our email IDs on the Rising Flame website, www.risingflame.org. So in case you can't find the link on our website, it should be up by Wednesday. But if you can't find it on our website, then please write to us and we could share it personally with you. Also to register for the next Saturday film screening, it'll be lovely if you could write to us and we can send you all the Zoom details.
Okay, sure, ma'am. I will do that. Can you please give me a brief, precise introduction about what does the Rising Flame does?
I'll do that. Okay. I'm just going to pause that question for a second and just wait if anybody has any more questions for Nadika. Any last questions, thoughts, comments? Okay, great. So Rising Flame is a nonprofit organization. We're based in Mumbai. We work across India, and we work on issues of leadership, voice, access, awareness, and advocacy. So these are the thematic buckets across which we work. We focus on rights of women and youths with disabilities, and currently we're organizing these calls so that we could come together in these difficult COVID period or moments and have some solidarity. So every Saturday we'll be meeting from 3:30 to 5 p.m. With different activities. This week was the book reading. I'd just like to thank a few people before we sign off. A big, big, big thank you to Nadika for her time and her beautiful story and for answering all our questions and interacting with us. Thank you so much, Nadika. Thanks to my team. So Arjita and Chenika from the Rising Flame team for coordinating this meeting and for also live transcribing. Thank you so much, Shabina, for your sign language interpretation. Thank you so much, Srinidhi, again from the Rising Flame team for supporting us in this whole event and also reading the book excerpt. Thank you all and hope to see all of you next week at 3:30 with what film and which link. We'll share the details shortly. Stay tuned. Rising Flame Twitter handle is @Rising Flame now. Look forward to seeing all of you next Saturday.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Session 1, April 4, 2020. A book reading 11 Ways to Love. Essays I Am Blind, So Is Love by Nidhi Goyal and The Smartphone Freed Me, Dating as a Trans Woman by Nadika Nadia. Stay tuned for Session 2. #community, #solidarity, #staying connected.